demonstrates a shared commitment to dialogue, nation building, and the future of Guyana. I thank each of you for joining us this afternoon, and encouraging your active participation throughout our program. At this time, I formally call the symposium to order. May I kindly invite everyone to please stand for the national pledge, followed by the party's prayer. I pledge. The party prayer.
Bless, O Lord, this our meeting, grant that all of this grace and peace in thy sight.
Thank you. You may be seated. We now proceed to the welcoming remarks. It is my honor and privilege to invite a Member of Parliament and Vice Chairman of the People's National Congress Reform to deliver the welcoming remarks this afternoon. He has consistently demonstrated dedication to national development and the advancement of Guyana's future. Ladies and gentlemen, please join in warmly welcoming Mr. Vince Roy Jordan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. General Secretary of the People's National Congress Reform, Comrade Sharon Benjamin, members of our Central Executive, members of Parliament, former General Secretary and Prime Minister of Guyana, Comrade Hamilton Green, former Mayor of Georgetown, mayors, deputy mayors, regional executives, distinguished guests, panelists, comrades, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On behalf of the People's National Congress Reform and the Partnership for National Unity, I warmly welcome you to this 60th Independence Symposium under the theme, Concluding the Independence Struggle. This evening, we gather not merely to celebrate an historic moment or milestone, but to reflect on the struggles, sacrifices, vision, and leadership that brought our nation from colonial rule to sovereign nationhood in 1966. We honor the architects of our independence, especially our founding leader and first executive president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Lynden Forbes Sampson Burnham, whose vision, courage, and political leadership helped engineer Guyana's independence and laid the foundation for nationhood, self-determination, and national pride. We are also deeply honored to have with us Elder Hamilton Green and a competent team of panelists. Comrade Green is a respected statesman who was present at the birth of Guyana's independence and played a role during some of the most important periods of our nation's development. His wealth of knowledge and experience remains invaluable to our country and to future generations. Tonight's symposium therefore provides us with a valuable opportunity to learn, reflect, and engage in meaningful discussion about where we came from, where we are today, and where we must go as a people united by one destiny. As we celebrate 60 years of independence, let us continue to work toward unity, development, and a stronger Guyana for all people. I want to formally welcome you to this 60th Independence Symposium. Thank you, and may God bless Guyana.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan, for setting the tone for this afternoon's discussion. We now move on to our next item on the program, a cultural presentation. Culture remains a powerful reflection of our identity, heritage, and shared value as a people, reminding us of the history and spirit that continue to shape our nation. We now transition to the culture item, which will be a song by Mr. Clayton Hines. Please welcome him.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. You know, it's always a pleasure for me to sing any of the national songs of Guyana. Now, I know as a party, we have fallen away from not ensuring that our national songs are sung continuously in our homes and in our workplaces and so on. So this afternoon, what I will do, I will sing the first one, Oh Beautiful Guyana, and then all of us will sing My Native Land. And I trust that with the outline I've seen here, wonderful choir to sing My Native Land. So let me first do Oh Beautiful Guyana. Oh beautiful Guyana, oh my lovely native land, more dear to me than all the world lies sea-washed, sun-kissed strand, or down upon the borders looking out on the deep, the great Atlantic blown into a fury, or asleep at morn, at noon, or better in the crimson sunset glow. I love thee, oh, I love thee. Now, let us do My Native Land. I know in the audience, there's some of us who can sing baritone, some of us can do the tenor part, some can do the bass. But I will leave with the melody. And some who can sing, just hum. I think we have been sitting a while. Why not let's all stand and make this thing look. Let me revive you a little bit before we start this discussion. Let us stand. And I want to acknowledge the arrival of our leader. Oh, I care not that others wave of our fair lands afar, where silver lakes and placid stream mirror the evening star. I care not though there will be great, their sceneries be grand, but none so fair as can compare with my own native land. Their silver lakes and rippling brooks may charm me when I roam, but what of that? No brooks none there can steal my love of home. Where I childhood used to play, and where the old folks rest must be to me, where'er I be, the dearest and the best. And though I roam o'er hills and dales, and brave old Neptune's foam, of crags and rocks and mossy dells, I still will turn me home. For when at length I come to die, I want no gilded tomb. Just let me rest within thy breast, where thy sweet flowers bloom, where thy sweet flowers bloom. Okay, give yourself a round of applause and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clayton Hines, for that presentation, which beautifully reflected the riches of our heritage and reminds us of the spirit and identity that unites us as a Guyanese. We now arrive at the panel discussion segment of this afternoon's symposium. We are privileged to have with us a distinguished panel whose knowledge, experience, and insights will contribute significantly to this afternoon's discussion on Guyana's continuing journey of nation building and development. To begin this afternoon discussion, we turn first to our opening panelist. She is a respected attorney at law whose law practice focuses on corporate and employment law. She is a former adjunct lecturer at the University of the West Indies, where she taught several courses, including law, governance, economics, and administrative law for more than a decade. Her career engagements are thus diverse, having worked in the Caribbean not only in education, but also in banking, the health sector, and the media in Guyana. It is my pleasure to invite Ms. Vanessa Thomas to share her contribution.
Good afternoon, everyone. Members of Parliament, former Prime Minister, Mr. Hamilton Green, leader of the People's National Congress Reform and the Partnership for National Unity, Mr. Aubrey Compton Norton, Vice Chairman of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. Vince Roy Jordan, General Secretary of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. Sherwood Benjamin, distinguished speakers, specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Arriving at a destination of 6 decades of independence from post-colonial struggles certainly allows for national conversations and commentary on serious matters of governance, democracy, and institutional strength. As we reflect on this monumental milestone in our country, the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, in this year, 2026, we are obligated to review our foundations, study the problems we faced, confront what we now encounter and understand the needs of our people that must be satisfied. For any Guyanese traveling to work on a 12 or sometimes 15-seat minibus, 60 years will mean nothing without higher consciousness of the political, constitutional, and administrative framework used by some and manipulated by others over those years to manage the affairs of Guyana. Among other things, our Constitution was intended to safeguard stable, not stolen leadership, to manage and not marginalize national wealth, to provide public services and promote the practices of certain fundamental freedoms by our national multi-ethnic population. Insofar as socioeconomic development is concerned, whilst our national development strategy boasts of focusing on critical infrastructure, public housing initiatives, and the building of resilient communities, the era of addressing historical domestic policies and laws to correct, for example, systemic intergenerational gaps is upon us at this juncture of our country's history. One aspect of governance is judicial oversight. And after much debate in the Caribbean region about the advent of the Caribbean Court of Justice as the apex court, and the transition from His Majesty's Privy Council to the Court of Appeal to the Caribbean Court of Justice, the utterances of a few legal luminaries have concluded that for Guyana, at this time, apparent seeping erosion of independent judiciary, comprising the High Court and the Court of Appeal, is perhaps mitigated or controlled almost exclusively by a Caribbean Court of Justice, expected to preserve the rule of law. Since governance relies on judicial independence, increased awareness and action to bolster confidence must be visible, and wider dissemination of information about the successes of the governing protective framework is integral. Hope for our Guyanese people in the context of governance, however, must go beyond a belief of legal address and legal redress, and guarantees for public access to resources and services fostering multi-ethnic harmony. Our diverse democratic makeup continues to be subject to feelings of abandonment, and abandonment is even experienced by persons of other nationalities in our country. Such feelings cannot be ignored, and therefore, maintaining inclusive governance systems that erase marginalization and promote shared prosperity, regardless of ethnic background, are critical. Indeed, for too many years, Guyanese have grappled with constitutional hurdles and a deep-seated distrust among political and ethnic fractions. At the age of 60, demons of democratic decay who will never fly into heaven must at the very least not be permitted to fly in the faces of the defining characteristic of the resilient Guyanese spirit. There's a better Guyana, a brighter Guyana for us all when responsibility of managing national revenues transparently to ensure long-term wealth distribution across all segments of society from our massive oil shore discoveries is shifted. Indeed, our newfound wealth derived from the offshore oil and gas reserves, which places Guyana in front of a global mirror, brings with it a profound responsibility for our governance. In identifying salient constitutional provisions, which of course remain relevant even today, authors Dr. Henry Jeffrey and Colin Baber, after 2 decades of independence in 1986 state, national economic planning will regulate the state, but the widest possible participation of the masses at enterprise, community, regional, and national levels is envisaged. And my plea today is for those with selfless political will to proactively engage the masses for meaningful participation to hasten ongoing pursuit of inclusive, accountable governance. Looking ahead, the success of Guyana's democracy will not be measured by our economic GDP alone. It will be determined by whether we choose integrity over influence, policy over patronage, including political patronage, and nation over party. The measure of democratic strength considers our historical, economic, ethnic-based political rivalries and the enhancing of institutional trust. Documented strategies that are actionable include bettering electoral integrity by making louder our voices and the voices of all civil society to independently monitor elections, educating our population on procedures and enforcing transparent political campaign financing. The recent report of the Carter Center has captured both our successes and systemic failures. Reforming of constitutional frameworks and promoting digital civic participation by using e-governance and digital platforms to engage Guyanese at home and abroad directly in policy consultations, service access, and anti-corruption tracking is even more now essential. Strengthening institutional oversight by way of instituting or insistence of the autonomy and capacity of watchdog bodies and supporting routine, transparent audits of government spending are integral factors that we must consider. In closing, the inherited eagerness to chart our own course since transition from colonial rule in 1966, despite political instability, economic hardship, and compromised democratic process, is eagerness that must live on in our spirits as we forge a unified destiny from a rich, diverse tapestry of cultures, ethnicities, and histories through dialogue, constitutional vigilance, and the unwavering commitment of our people to the rule of law. Concluding the independence struggle requires reaffirming that sovereignty rests with the people. Let us honor the struggles of the past 60 years by building a democratic system that is fair, impartial, and representative of our highest national ideals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. We appreciate your thoughtful contribution to the role of law and governance in strengthening our democracy. We now welcome a businessman, tax consultant, and advocate for economic development, whose interest spans finance, agriculture, and national progress. His perspective on economic growth, civic responsibility, and nation building speak directly to this afternoon's theme, concluding the independence struggle. As we reflect on the work still required to secure a stronger and more prosperous Guyana, please join in welcoming Mr. Lubumba Angoy.
Thank you very much, Selena. Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. I'll just go right into my thoughts that I would like to share today. So what I'll do today is probably a little different to what my predecessor does. I'll just share some thoughts on the topic youth innovation and the future of Guyana. One of the first things that comes to mind when you think of youths is what they represent in Guyana's context. And youths represent 70% of our population. And that's a major share of who we are as a nation. So one can always ask the question, how are we engaging the major share of our population? And I'd like to make a few suggestions that we can consider as to how we can engage and rather facilitate the potential that youths represent. First off, I think the youths are an untapped demographic in our nation, and it's our duty as a nation to ensure that we tap into that potential. And some of the things that can allow us to tap into the potential of youth, there should be things that entirely facilitate. So we need, for example, legislation that allows youth to be able to engage us through, for example, the orange economy. We have lots of creatives. And one of the concerns that youth share is we have this potential, but we don't see how we can monetize it adequately. So that's a prompt to the powers that be. Unleash the potential, make the legislation work, make it available. Apart from legislation, we need structures. You know, what's our education offering to youth? Is it education the way we knew it, or is it education the way it needs to be? If you look around at the global reality, education is a nimble pursuit. Things are changing. I mean, 30 years ago, cell phones were new to us as a nation. And here we are, everybody has a cell phone. That's indicative of the transitions that we need to allow our youth to participate in, and I'd rather say lead. At my age, I'm not a youth. Somebody called me uncle the other day, and I had to think about it for a moment. But the reality is that there's that section of our society that we need to sit and engage with in a meaningful way, not in a way that says, here is what we think you must do, but we need to ask the questions. What is it that you would like? How is it that we can engage you? How is it that your potential can be realized? So I think we need to be very open and accommodating in that regard. I came across an interesting statistic. In Guyana, 45% of our youth are not in education, employment, or training. So if 70% of our population is under-engaged, that's something that we need to have probably a national conversation about. So, I'm just sharing these thoughts. I say we must always advance adolescents adequately. I think that's, along the lines of what I'm saying. So in terms of facilitating what the potential can be, one of the realities is that youths need resources. One of the most critical resources they need is funding. So our national stance should be that we will accommodate youth, adequately prepare them through our education system, and adequately fund them so that their innovations and their creativity can be a benefit to all of us. So those are the gist of my thoughts on youth and innovation and their potential. Essentially, we need to unleash them. And to achieve that, I would say we need to call them to the table, get their insight and potential activated, put them at the helm, and get out of their way. So to tie this all together on the subject of concluding the independence struggle, I'd like to say that after 60 years, we have a far way to go. And our approach to concluding a struggle has to be a meticulous, united process. And to be united, we need to include our youths. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Angoy. We appreciate your contribution and your emphasis on the importance of continued national progress. Before we proceed, could the driver of PAB 1042 please report to the back? PAB 1042. Our next panelist is an entrepreneur, attorney at law, engineer, former university lecturer, and writer, whose work reflects a deep commitment to service, knowledge, and national development. His contributions across law, education, public commentary, and philanthropy embody the idea that independence must be strengthened not only politically, but also through informed leadership, civic responsibility, and service to others. It is my pleasure to invite Mr. Ronald Daniels.
Good evening, comrades. I stand on the protocols as established. Before I dive right in, I just want to take a brief moment to acknowledge in our midst Ms. Gwendolyn Blair, who I had the good honor of meeting downstairs, and who has fond and nostalgic memories of these hallowed halls. Her father served as General Secretary and President of the Guyana Teachers Union, and he was also quite instrumental in establishing a partnership between the Guyana Teachers Union and the Canadian Teachers Union. So I just want to acknowledge Mr. Mayor. Thank you ever so much. I should be before you for 10 minutes. It is a tremendous honor to stand before you as we mark the 60th anniversary of our nation's independence. In keeping with the tradition of characterizing significant milestones, ours is a diamond jubilee. A jubilee traditionally marks an important milestone in the reign of a monarch. The paradox here, as I'm sure you recognize, is that we are marking our milestone of years removed from colonial rule and from being subjects of the British monarch. I'm mindful that this is late afternoon and that some of you have stopped by from work and others perhaps from school and still others from various commitments to join us in marking this momentous occasion. What your presence here does is reaffirm that you are truly the heart and soul of our nation. The road to our independence was not a smooth road. The road to our independence led from the ideological differences and divide between Forbes Burnham and Cheddi Jagan, the London Constitutional Conferences. Those differences led to disagreements over the electoral system that would usher in our independence, who would be at the helm of government when we attained independence, and the timing by which we should have attained independence. Sadly, Burnham and Jagan were not able to bridge the divide between them in time to welcome together our right to self-determination, which they both fought for. And more sadly, despite their efforts thereafter, they were not able to bridge the divide in any sustainable way. This is our history, one that we cannot erase, but certainly one we could learn from. I stand before you this evening, not only as a son of the soil, not only as a privileged and committed member of the ever mighty People's National Congress, but also as a proud and formidable heir of Burnham's timeless philosophy and legacy of economic self-reliance, of placing primacy upon Guyanese of all races, religion, gender, and ethnic extraction. Forbes Burnham's blueprint of social cohesion remains our foundation and our most practicable framework for our carving out as Guyanese brothers and sisters a true national identity. Burnham recognized, same as a house, that a country divided cannot stand. In 1970, when we unhinged our last anchor to British monarchy by becoming a republic, Burnham declared, and I quote, "The problem of racial cleavage, racial antagonism, and distress is still with us. My government considers it a matter of great importance and utmost urgency that its duty is to rule in the interest of all people in this country. All the people are equally important, whether they belong to a large group or a small group," end of quote. It was his fervent hope that we would come together as one people whose bonds of kinship and friendship would meld us into one nation, and that as a nation, we would optimize our collective resources and carve a pathway towards one destiny. Isn't this a powerful prescription for social cohesion and national unity? I would vainly attempt to deceive you were I to suggest that unity is easy. Coming together in a society that is an ethnic jumble pot and one as polarized as we are is not the most natural and easiest thing. Even uniting among family in a household is not. But by the same token, I fancy it my duty to remind us that this unity and division have adverse consequences that spread across generations. Dr. Jagan urged us to have unity, goodwill, and confidence, a prescription we are yet to heed. Burnham and Jagan's differences from decades past ought not to be used as tools to inspire fear in each other and to continue to chisel oceans between us. Our harsh reality is one whereby us versus them is the criterion we use to distribute opportunities and to distribute our resources. The politics of division stands guard at the gateway to economic inclusion. Why can't a child from Linden, Tiger Bay, Albaiston, or Buxton have the same shot as a child from Pushad Nagar, Bel Air, or Pradoville at a good school, a good job, seamless access to business opportunities, and a dignified life? Why, when a child from these communities succeeds, he or she has to be celebrated with expressions such as, "Who said nothing good could come out of Buxton? Who said nothing good could come out of Tiger Bay? Who said nothing good could come out of Sophia? Who said nothing good could come out of Caneville?" Whereas it is the most normal thing when its counterparts from the privileged communities succeed. Why must some of our young people be timid to record their correct addresses in job applications despite their very hard-earned academic successes? Why must our last names, our associations, our party loyalty determine who gets a contract, who gets a loan, who gets promoted at his or her job, and who catches hell? We are at the crossroads. Guyana boasts one of the largest per capita oil discoveries on earth. At the end of 2025, we earned more than $7.5 billion in oil revenue. We are truly at that juncture where the rising tide of our economy can lift and float all of our boats. Equity would demand, however, that some of us be given boats to begin with. As the cost of living soars, the rich are becoming smaller and smaller as they move light years away from the poor on the oil and gas horizon. There is really no justification why, as the World Bank report disclosed, 58% of our countrymen should be living in poverty. For us to start constructing a cohesive society, contracts, jobs, social and economic benefits cannot continue to flow to those who are most politically connected as against those who are most qualified. It was Jagan who admonished us that, and I quote, "There will be no place in our society for first-class citizens, second-class citizens, or third-class citizens, only Guyanese citizens. End of quote. It appears that those to whom he has entrusted his legacy have forgotten this. We in the PNC and in the APNU are not against responsible oil exploration and production. We are opposed to the irresponsible distribution of the benefits thereof. It is our clarion call that our teachers, our nurses, our soldiers, our police officers, our small business owners, our miners, our vendors, our public servants, our Guyanese brothers and sisters receive their just share of our national patrimony. Our leaders have a responsibility to create the conditions conducive to a socially cohesive society, one that is stable and profitable. And we have a duty to hold them accountable. Let us succeed where our founder leaders did not. Let us build a Guyana that embodies one people who are one nation, forging ahead to one destiny. I am most grateful for your kind indulgence.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels, for those meaningful reflections on democracy and national responsibility. We are also honored to hear from one of Guyana's most respected chartered accountant, attorney at law, and public commentator, widely recognized for his work in promoting transparency, accountability, and good governance. Through decades of professional and public service, his voice remained influential in national discussion surrounding public policy, constitutional matters, and the responsibility management of Guyana's resources, issues that remain central to the continuing journey of independence and national development. Ladies and gentlemen, please join in welcoming Mr. Christopher Ram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All protocols observed. Like Ronald, I would like to start by quoting the founder leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, on the 15th of July, 1971, following vesting day at Lyndon. He said, "We achieved political independence on the 26th of May, 1966. We got ourselves a new flag. We got ourselves a new outfit. We got ourselves a new wardrobe. But we did not get ourselves a new economy. Our economy continued to be dominated by outsiders, important sectors like bauxite and the financial institutions by non-Guyanese. We Guyanese had no part or lot in the making of vital decisions which could affect our economic progress or retrogression." These words were spoken on the very day this country took into its own hands the bauxite installation at Lyndon, placing it under Guyanese control. Tonight, 60 years on, we are obliged to ask ourselves whether Burnham's diagnosis still holds. In the last decade, we achieved something that even our founders, in their wildest dreams, could scarcely have imagined. One of the largest petroleum discoveries of the modern era. Let that sink in. But have we at last got ourselves a new economy in which the resources of this country genuinely work for its people? I think the evidence is out there on the streets. The history of Ghana is a history of generous resources producing modest returns to its people. Sugar, which started sometime, I think, around the 17th century, enriched empires. It was responsible for the development of cities in the United Kingdom. Bauxite industrialized foreign economies, and now oil has placed Guyana among the most resource-rich territories in the world. Yet, many Guyanese remain completely insecure. Yes, independence and nationalization brought with it imperfections and failures. But such imperfections and failures were capable of correction by our own people. But when it comes to oil and our natural resources, particularly extractive resources, we have a serious national principle to consider, that sovereignty must have economic substance. What's the point of talking about sovereignty if you don't have economic substance and independence? And here I mean not merely constitutional symbolism, but a sovereignty which should never be compromised, certainly not by some weak notion called sanctity of contract. Oil now accounts for approximately 88% of Guyana's export. Nearly 9 out of every $10 we earn from the rest of the world from a single industry controlled by a single consortium of 3 companies, 2 Americans and 1 Chinese, operating under a single agreement that overrides practically every single fiscal law of this country. Think of that. How can you describe this as independence? Let me give you an example. A royalty of 2%, Suriname gets 6%. A net profit share among the lowest in the modern petroleum world. And most remarkably, an arrangement under which this country, meaning you, I, all these people at the head table, pay the taxes for these oil companies out of our share of our oil. And we Guyanese don't seem to be offended by that. Let me give you an example. One of the oil companies recently published its financial statements for 2025. The financial statements, not Ram as an accountant trying to reinterpret anything, taking straight their financial statements, shows that that oil company has already paid back his head office for every penny it invested in Guyana, just after a few years. And these companies will be here well into the final quarter of this century, repaying their taxes. That's what we are facing. They have, take this one, they have undistributed retained profits, meaning we've collected all this profit, we paid out some, the retained profit that is left is more than the entire budget of Guyana for 2026. Entire budget, their retained profit. more than the entire national budget. And when I say more, I mean by hundreds of billions of dollars. Contrast that. We have to build the roads, we have to fix the ports, we have to put up with all the transportation and convenience out of our share of the profit, while they build all these accumulated profits. Is something wrong with us as a people 60 years after independence? In 1986, when the petroleum bill was debated in this country's parliament, and before again, Ronald, Dr. Cheddi Jagan warned that the bill placed Guyana's independence in the hands of the transnationals. He asked, are we giving them a blank check? That is what this bill is all about. Take a blank check, boy. Come along. You know where that language came from. I don't have to tell you. You can write your own tax laws. Jagan was prophetic in this regard. You can write your own tax laws. You can write your own measures. We need you so badly today. Nothing would set the terms. They declare in Houston what the force majeure and continuing clause will be. They don't, and as one of their diplomats said, there is no space between President Irfan Ali and the Exxon man in Guyana. You are regulating people and there is no space between you. They can't finish an audit for 15 years. Come on, where is our independence? Sadly, Jagan's warning was vindicated within 13 years. The 1999 petroleum agreement, signed by then, ironically, President Janet Jagan, awarded to Esso far more blocks than the standard 60 allowed under the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act. In 2016, that agreement was renewed in the strangest of circumstances. Poor Raphael Trotman almost had his hand broken, or they pushed his hand behind his back. It was renewed, as I said, in the strangest of circumstances. Executed in June of that year, and yet kept hidden from the public until December 2017, almost 1.5 years after. And only after sustained pressure because of people like you, who raised your voice and said, this must not stand. The signing bonus of 18 million United States dollars was concealed and held off budget at the Bank of Guyana. And that is to protect Exxon. And they decided how the money would be spent. The replacement of the 1999 agreement was effected through a so-called bridging deed without parliamentary scrutiny. And in 2020, the opportunity to renegotiate was set aside under what was called another bridging agreement. Mr. Chairperson, sorry, I apologize. This is not a problem of oil alone. It is a pattern. And this is why, I mean, the sheer size of oil must concern us. But this is a pattern. Our goal, and you will read the press, leaves through channels Guyana itself cannot account for. Under a royal regime barely touched in a generation, bauxite, the very industry which Burnham ended in 1971, is again under foreign ownership, again negotiated behind closed doors. And if you look at the financial statements, they either pay this tax or they pay that tax. They don't pay both the taxes. So they practically take royalty for free and create all, I don't live in Linden, but I've been there, I don't think it's the healthiest of places when it comes to that bauxite dust when the wind blows. And now we have new chapters in this exploitation of our resources, which I dare say, and you all know I speak my mind, and I haven't quite caught up with Hammy, but I'm getting there. Age gives you some right to say some things. We are here now that uranium has become a Guyanese story, with foreign juniors drilling at Kurupong on a deposit measured in tens of millions of pounds, and not one national debate. This is why I'm offended. Not one national debate on the framework under which a nuclear fuel mineral leaves this republic. Power generation, the most consequential infrastructure decision of this generation, no pun on the word generation, is being shaped through contracts whose terms most members of parliament have never seen. And if you were to add the cumulative rent paid for those things, you could have bought them, and if you had used, say, solar power, we would have had more stable electricity at a far less cost. Now, in every one of these sectors, the deals are being struck, the contracts drafted, the prices negotiated, and tax laws circumvented. All the while, many political leaders remain silent. Leaders of sovereign states do not watch their country's wealth being divided, stripped, and exploited and exported. They stand up for Guyana. Then there is our people. We're in a union hall. Guyanese workers in many of the extractive sectors, most notably petroleum, receive a fraction of what expatriates earn for similar work. Forget this joke about local content. And the high-value technical and managerial functions remain dominated by foreigners. This is not merely a labor issue. It is a developmental issue. A country cannot claim economic transformation if its citizens remain marginal to the strategic core of its most profitable industry. And despite unprecedented growth, the boats and the planes are full of young people leaving. That's not a mark of this fastest growing economy. Where is the independence when our country exports its natural resources and its children in almost the same breath? My friends, and I like the word comrade, you can forgive me. The danger is not the resource. The danger lies in weak governance, weak bargaining, weak institutions, and weak political leadership on all sides. And the failure to convert temporary resource wealth, because these are resource wealth, some of the wells are already being diminished because, of course, people want to get a cash today is much better than cash tomorrow. They're not being transformed into national future wealth and resources. Guyana is not condemned to that future. We must ensure it is not condemned to that future, but avoiding it will require courage, discipline, and strong national institutions. I will keep the pattern of making my comments short. Everybody was short, so I wouldn't take advantage. Let me make 3 propositions. First, the time has come for a mature national discussion on the renegotiation. Forget talking about what ring fencing. We passed ring fencing. Most of the money done spent. Let's talk about renegotiation of this contract. We have changed circumstances. We have a country that exports so much, and we have foreign currency shortage. That alone is a circumstance that drives this. How can we have this? renegotiation is not hostility to investment, as the American ambassador would have us believe. It is a legitimate exercise of sovereignty when circumstances fundamentally demand it. Second, the regulation of the petroleum sector must no longer rest on political direction alone. Look around this room, look around the offices and places in Guyana and our diaspora. You see an abundance of talent. It's about time that our political leaders call for an independent petroleum commission, one comprising of people who know what they're doing. Insulated from partisan influence, grounded in transparency, and wedded to technical competence. So 1, renegotiation. 2, petroleum commission. Third one, there should be a serious commission of inquiry into the circumstances surrounding both the 1999 and the 2016 agreement. Mr. Trotman himself said he favors a commission of inquiry, and he offered. And why are our political leaders not demanding it? We have the Clyde and Company report. They are holding out onto it. Nobody knows what is in it. Sugar, bauxite, rice, in pre-colonial days, had a plethora of commissions of inquiry. We have not had a single commission in the oil sector. Shame on our politicians. So I am saying there must be a commission, there must be a petroleum, we must have a serious commission of inquiry into the circumstances. Not as vengeance. We don't, look, we're not going after individuals, we're going after an industry and a sector and the wealth of our people. It is not political theater either, but as a matter of national sovereignty and national accountability. The story did not begin in 2016, and any honest reckoning must follow the thread back to where it was first spun. 60 years on, Guyana stands at a defining moment. History will not judge us by how much we extracted, but how much came back to us, and by whether ordinary citizens achieved dignity, security, and a fair share of the wealth of their own country, in which we suffered blood, sweat, and tears long centuries ago. And we must not take that for granted. Now, I am about to close. It is now too late for minor technicalities like ring fencing. The clock is about to strike midnight. Let me remind our political leaders that economic independence remains the unfinished business of this republic. A flag without an economy, as Prime Minister then President Burnham warned us, is no independence at all. In closing, I notice the theme continuing the independence struggle. I would like to implore everyone in this room and the party and the parliamentary representatives that we are not to continue, we need to restart this independence struggle. The 2016 petroleum agreement was a warning, and we must not ignore it. So let us hope that before long, we will address some of these serious deficiencies that lead a resource-rich country to total impoverishment. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Ram, for that powerful analysis and perspective, as well as challenging us to think carefully about the economic foundation of true independence. Finally, we are privileged to hear from a long-standing elder and statesman of the People's National Congress Reform, whose life and service has been closely tied to Guyana's political history and development. As someone who witnessed and contributed to pivotal moments in our nation's journey, his reflections carry both historical significance and deep national meaning. His presence reminds us that the struggle for independence extends beyond political freedom to the continued pursuit of unity, dignity, self-determination, and national pride. Please warmly welcome Mr. Hamilton Green, OR.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. First of all, let me call my good friend Christopher Ram. He stole more effectively than I could have some of the points I wanted to make. Give him a round of applause. Some time ago, we developed a theme, which is in a booklet, before I go for the American Rising Common Leader and the CC of the PNC, and thank them graciously for allowing me this opportunity to speak. Give him a round of applause, too. Some time ago, I developed with others the theme, the rocky but righteous road to independence. Listen to the other speakers, particularly the last. It is now patent that the dreams we had, particularly our two titans, have been eroded. And what we see today is the onset of a recolonization that I hope this session and others would give us the gump and the brawn. And since the ladies here, I don't want to use the other B, to pursue this matter relentlessly. It will not do justice to those who came here in ships, tricked by some of their own elders, put in what is now called the safe castles in West Africa, Gold Coast, now known as Ghana, and put on ships bound for both America and the Caribbean. On arrival, they were enslaved. We need to reverse that tragedy. Let me make it very clear, as the founder leader will say, pellucidly clear. My wife, who went to Bishop, tells me You can't politically claim I went to Queens. That the struggle has now begun. And I hope out of this session, each and every one of us will not regard this as an evening of platitudes and pious statements, but leave here determined to speak to at least one or two young people and point out the fact that we are being subtly re-enslaved. And that all of us, including those who may have been at the Queen Elizabeth Park on that beautiful night when Lieutenant Jimmy Van Slope lowered the Union Jack as the flag over our country for the last time, and Lieutenant Desmond Roberts, who I spoke to today, hoisted the golden arrowhead with pride and dignity. As the golden arrowhead reached the top of the flag, to use the words of my last daughter, the flag danced to the winds of the northeast trade winds, the very winds that brought all of us here and enslaved some of us. Let me make the first point. The worst tragedy in human history over the past few centuries was slavery. That did not happen without the subtle, and I say stupid, concurrence of some of the chiefs, and the magnificent rascality and machinations of the Europeans. Today, I pose the question to you: is history repeating itself? Is history repeating itself when in 1763, our illustrious ancestors struck the major blow for freedom, but they were surrounded by our Armenian brothers who were tricked by Massa. I mentioned that as the next lesson. Let us learn that this will not be an easy journey. But if you understand the lessons that history is offering us, all of us, without exception, must leave here determined by next independence anniversary, we have developed among some of our young people the strength, physical and mental, to face the giant that is among us. It's not an easy task, because as happened earlier, those people have the money and the techniques to fool us. And they also then, as they have now, a battery of our own people, our own kith and kin, who sometimes ungraciously we call house slaves. A dangerous group. A dangerous group because they look like you and I. We must anchor our next move on the lessons history has to offer us. After 1763, the slaves were not pious. They knew what all of us understand. It's human nature to want to be free and, by extension, independent. But human history has shown that along with that belief, there's always a parallel effort by some evil people to make independence a sham. Listen, is that not the situation in Ghana today? When Christopher Ram, my Scorpio brother, spoke a moment ago, is it not a fact that we are being tricked, some of us, by the Grand Master of subterfuge? They've had centuries of it, you know. And so when 1823 was about to come, it was the house slaves who tipped off Massa that put down that uprising. Before I came here, my beloved wife warned me I mustn't talk too long. And since my secretary is here, I know she can go and talk on me. But to be serious, these are tragic times, you know. When we hoisted the golden arrowhead, those of us hoped that independence would be meaningful. And if today, as is obviously visible, you have men, and maybe I shouldn't call them men, mice, who don't understand nor appreciate the struggles of the slave ancestors, the indentured laborers who worked hard on their estate, practiced deferred gratification. They don't know that history or don't care to know. And we see them genuflecting before the very people who enslaved our noble ancestors. We've got, in the words of the only remaining member of the 1953 Waddington Constitution, we've got to stop this confounded nonsense. At school, one of my favorite passages was found in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, in referring to the tyrant. Why, man, he does bestride the narrow world like a colossus. And we petty men peep about his huge legs to find ourselves this Honorable Graves. And this is the part I want us to ponder. The fault there, Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. In ourselves that we are underlings. When we leave here today, would all of us break that knot of being subservient and stand up and say, as Chris told us, and in my own words, we don't want a big piece of the cake, a little bigger slice. We're not avaricious people, you know, but we're not stupid people. And comrades, I am blind but a batting. I would ask those of you out there, I'm repeating myself, to spend as much time as you can to talk to our young people in the rural and urban areas about what is facing them. As we observed earlier, what is happening? There's a lot of money going around. So some people are only seeing the increment from the days when there was no oil, gas, and the abundance of money being hoarded and exploited from gold. I say, and not get myself in trouble, it's all right. Gold don't rust, you know. And I expect that we have the good sense to leave that gold in the ground so that the children of those comers arrayed here and those out there can develop the technology to exploit that gold. Because gold will always be precious, you know. But when we give away all that gold and our children go through certain areas and what was clear water, you can't even put your boots inside. What will they say about unto us? The curse is in our graves. Let us not betray them, comrades. Those of us on this platform, I know, are available so we can discuss the couscous. And the methodology to deal with this matter. I have no doubt that at Fort Island, when the golden arrowhead is hoisted, you hear all kinds of platitudes. All kinds of platitudes. But I remember on the onset of the French Revolution, Marie Antoinette, they say these words are incorrectly ascribed to her. But that's what I learned earlier. They have no bread, but give them cake. They have no bread, but give them cake. It suggests, as we're going to hear from Fort Island, a complete disconnect from the realities of people. Teachers, my family, were moving to the islands because they're dissatisfied with remuneration. When I was coming here, what Tusi said to me, he's aware of people who, to provide some education for the children, are subsisting on 1 meal a day in this fastest growing economy. I ask you, comrades, I plead with you, let us use this occasion as a rallying call to say, and even if they don't call Parliament, and let me congratulate my young MP, Amanza, because at least the diplomatic community has responded, directly criticizing the government for not calling Parliament for over 100 days. And you talk about democracy? That's not democracy. That's demon gone crazy. But comrades, the old Kovacamite, I would like to help. And I conclude that if there's anything more I could say during the question period, the old man is available to share his experience over the year. You see, nothing's new under the sun, you know. Let me take you back a few years. When Hitler invaded Poland, and the first time ex-invaded, I ain't call his name, I ain't gonna get locked up, and put my children at risk. France and the United Kingdom joined in the battle, which ended up in what we call World War II. The Germans poured about 1,000 bombs in London and the contiguous areas in 1940. And come as whatever you say, you got to get a bit credit for their standing up to real pressure. But when the British Bulldog, and I first heard it from one of my English teachers, that's Sir Winston Churchill. He got the name because he was so aggressive. Came to office in 1942, at the height of the war. And you all got these fancy phones. Don't rely on the woman box up here. He said that he was not appointed His Majesty's First Minister to preside over the liquidation of the British Empire. And I believe, had he not lost the elections in July of 1945, independence would have been a far way off. But his successor, Clement Attlee, pushed through independence for many countries. And if you remember, the 1953 Constitution was quite advanced, and on paper, we should have been next in another 4 or 5 years to gain independence. Trinidad got hers before us, Jamaica, and North Rhodesia, now Zambia, got her independence in October 19. And why it is our independence was delayed. At question time, since the old covert mic was there, I'll tell you what happened at the first two conferences where people couldn't settle the differences. And I leave this one statement with you as another lesson. When those three groups, the UF, the PNC, and the PP, couldn't settle the details of the three main issues, Dr. Jagan is on record as saying he has great faith and confidence in the British sense of fair play and justice. And when they ruled on matters that were not pleasing to him, he came back and said there'll be a hurricane. There were hurricanes in the region at the time, a hurricane of protests. That translated into violence. And we must not forget those issues. And when the Americans, through John F. Kennedy, seemed anxious to urge the British to grant independence to Guyana, because the boogeyman was communism. In the famous rocking chair meeting, he asked Dr. Jagan, are you a communist? Poor Chedi wiggle and waffle. They asked our other Titan, Forbes Burnham, the same question. And Burnham took them through 58 minutes, non-stop, without a note, explained to them how the word communism came into the dictionary and the lexicon, what Karl meant, Karl Marx. When the founder leader was finished with them, the British and the Americans, top people in exploration said, oh, the ambiguous Mr. Burnham. We need within the party, Commodore Norton and others, men with that sagacity and drive to save us from being re-enslaved and recolonized. I thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you, Mr. Green, for sharing those profound reflections and historical insights. Thank you to our panelists for their thoughtful contributions. We will now move into our question and answer segment. Kindly state your name before asking your question, and please keep the question concise so we may be able to accommodate as many participants as possible. We will take about 3 questions. Yes. The mic is there.
My name is Gerald Correa, of course, the organization of the people, a political coalition that was inspired by the revolutionary principles of Forbes Burnham. He took that name from a speech he delivered to the People's National Congress in 1976 towards the people's victory. I am unapologetically a Burnhamite. I don't have a question, but I want to say just a few things. The question is, and before I go on, Chris, like you, age has given me a right and a privilege to say certain things. And you know me, I call an axe and a spade a spade. I have no axe to grind, and they don't even give me transit visas, mustard visas. So I got no problem. I was once on Christopher Ram's program, Plain Talk, and Chris posed the question to me. Jagdeo was campaigning that if the PPP was returned to office, they will renegotiate the contract. You remember that, Chris? And I said, you asked me if Jagdeo and the PPP would do that. And I said, no. And I give the reason. And I put it in a nutshell by saying, because all of them are afraid of white people. That's how I put it. I believe what Amilcar Cabral, the great Pan-African revolutionary, said. Tell no lies, claim no easy victories. The question is Guyana independent and sovereign? Yes or no? No, it is not. On paper, it is sovereign and independent. It is not a substantial independence. Listen to Alastair Rutledge, the CEO of Exxon. Listen to the US ambassador. Listen to Marco Rubio. And if you don't realize by now we are treated like, and we are a colony, then I don't know where you're living. Listen to the US ambassador. She actually said, don't negotiate, renegotiate. The issue is this. The question is this. We need to carry on, as Chris said, we have to complete the struggle. As we say, we have to complete the national liberation struggle, which was started in 1763, carried on by the Enmore Martyrs and Forbes Burnham and others. We have to carry on the national liberation struggle to achieve true independence. Burnham, like Nkrumah wrote a book by the name of, my good friend Aubrey know that, Imperialism, the last stage, Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And Nkrumah said that political independence is meaningless if you don't have economic independence. You have to have control of your resources. Look at what the leadership in the Sahel countries of Burkina Faso and Mali are doing. We have to complete the national liberation struggle. We have to have the courage and the political will. And those who don't have it should move aside and let those who have it. The elephant in the room is the United States imperialism, the British and the Canadians. They call the shots in this country. Do you know that Linseco, the company that bid for the contract and got it over the Chinese companies that were tested, everybody's saying, but Linseco corruption. Do you know the connection with Linseco to Rubio? Rubio told the government to give Linseco over the Chinese companies. This is what is going on. So if we want to recapture our resources, if we want to rein in the Rutledges and them who believe that they own this, we have to mobilize, we have to organize. All of us have to work together. I come in the spirit of Atto. I'm an Atto. I love coffee, but I'm Atto. Because when I see people like Rutledge and the US ambassador, I feel like chopping off the head. Right? So what I'm saying is we have to continue this fight and stand up. Exxon is not an ordinary company. It is not. It's an arm of US imperialism. And when Exxon was kicked out of Venezuela by Chavez, the US put sanctions on them. So it's okay to talk about renegotiation, but prepare for fight. Prepare for fight. And the reason why our leaders are not prepared for the fight, because they have assets in Canada, assets in the US, assets in the UK, their children are studying over there. And the minute they talk about renegotiation, brothers and sisters, believe me, those white demons in the ABC EU countries can pick up the phone and call them and say, behave yourself. I say no more.
Yeah, good evening again, comrades. I want to compliment all the presenters this evening for what they have said. I hear my friend, but I want to zoom in a little bit on Mr. Christopher Ram, first of all. When I listen to Mr. Christopher Ram's kind of presentation, you get the impression as a Guyanese, as if you can rise up and really do some very serious things to some of the people that are managing the affairs of this country. Because those facts that you have presented, which in my view is not in the public domain in terms of all these things that ExxonMobil and these companies that are operating in Guyana are doing, we, apart from what was said, the parties, leaders in this country, in other parties and other groups, they have to devise a way for this kind of information to be disseminated amongst this 70% young people to which you have referred. Because young people, if they don't have the information, if they have it, then they will begin to ask questions. And those kind of questions will lead to actions. So, first of all, I'm saying that parties, organizations need to find a way to disseminate that kind of information because of the challenges that we face right now in Ghana. That's the first one. Secondly, I was part of a panel of a discussion that the PPP had at this new hotel. They got it 4 Points or 4 Corners or something. I don't remember the name. This new hotel over here. And I was happy to hear the back and forth between Kit Nascimento and former President Donald Ramotar. Kit was trying to say what constituted the history of Guyana. And when Donald Ramotar had to present, he had a totally different issue. When they opened to question time, the panel, the two of them, had what you call a big back and forth as to why didn't that, and this did that. I say that to say this. What they were trying to say, and Mr. Ramotar said, at one point, they had developed a group to examine and put together the history of Guyana. And that group failed, and nothing has happened since. I subsequently made the point that one of the reasons why the group failed was as a result of the same thing that occurred, say, between the two of them on the panel, because everybody got their own interpretation of the history. They had a different, because if you ask the PNC to write a history, the PNC will write it from their perspective. If you ask the PPP to write a history, they're going to write the history, which is very critical for our young people, from their perspective. So what I am suggesting, apart from the dissemination of data information like you have presented, there is a need for a collective effort to put together a bipartisan team to write Guyana's history. I stop there.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, protocol observed for the dignitaries. My name is Gwyneth Blair, and I live in the US for 40-something years. But to me, where you're born, it's your home. And that's how I see it. This is home. If I'm in the US, I say I'm going home in the US. And I'm very saddened, number one, very saddened, very confused by what is going on in Guyana. There was a PNC, and I wouldn't say it was a black group. There was the PPP. I wouldn't say it was an Indian group. What happened between the two, we always were like family. I know that the last time I came, I went to the seawall, and my friend said, okay, let's go and buy from these black people. Well, my father never taught us like that. We had Indians living with us. There was an Indian lady who died. They said, sister of my father. He worked in King Grove. So we didn't have that. So my friend said, let us go to the people, the black people, and, give them our patronage. So when we gave them the money, there was an Indian lady at the back. She was taking the money and doing the food and everything. So what we're seeing is something that doesn't help us, because a lot of the things in the forefront, you have black or you have Indians, but the owner of these things might be either. You see, we have to learn. There's so much strategy going on in this country that leads you nowhere. Don't try to say, I'm going to do black because an Indian own it. Don't say, I'm going to be Indian, black might own it. We have to bridge that gap between Indians and blacks, Afro-Guyanese. When my dad was going through Bath, 63, 64, I was a little girl. And they put the thing across. And my father said they would have killed him. And this Indian lady came out and she said, no, 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 no. This teacher Basil Blair, nobody ain't touching him. These are some of the things that are profound. And it is in my mind that my dad's life was saved at that time. I have a little soft spot for Pastor Hamilton Green. I have a little soft spot because I know he and my dad were they were okay. And when I hear him talk, and when I hear him say that he wants to give of himself, we got to do something now. Mr. Green is not 20, 30, or 40. The resources that you have every year, we're talking about doing and doing what is being done to bridge the gap. The last thing I'm going to say is that when we came here, there are a lot of people. There's a plane load from London. My brother came in today. There's a plane load from New York. We should be there at the airport, or we should be working with those people who are organizing these things. Because when we come here for the independence, it's the fun. Everybody else here come to have fun. Today, you realize it's not fun. There's so much that we need to do, and there are people who are coming every year. The 50th anniversary, forget it. Let's use some of these resources to build Guyana and make it Guyanese. Let's do something now.
I'll take two more.
Good evening, everyone. Michael Kelman, member of the OVP organization. We are good at hosting these things, but my question is, what significant action will we take after this? Let us give it a time and a date.
One more question.
Pardon me, troublesome man, Yes, allow me to stand on the protocols already established. Now, Mr. Angai, you happen to be related to Gart? Okay, I can see the features. A trooper. Yes, it has to do with youth. Now, as we see it today, even as I speak, it is the most dangerous thing to walk in this country with these young people. What Bonham would have done is that he created something to take care of these persons. I'll ask you a question at the end. Where he created the National Service, Youth Corps, and these kind of things, to keep these people out of problems. There are times when I know persons who are picked up, youngsters taken to Kimbia, and their parents were told, we have him, send him clothes every month, the kind of thing. Because between 1992 and 2015, 2 generations of young Guyanese people is being destroyed. And I'm not talking about just black youth, 2 generations. And before, as a youngster on the East Coast, at Bachelor's Adventure and Moore area, I would have seen my mother going to a cinema named Gem Cinema. They had subtitles and pantomime at that time. And my mother and the Jumrali's mother would leave, we would play together. Even though it might have been felt that during the time, before 1990 time, where you want to blame Chetty for this or blame Bonham for that. I think that those 2 fellows were so smart, they were conning the white people until they found out. Because you would find Chetty would go into Parliament, break up things and all kind of thing. And a couple hours after, these guys get together. Now, what I want to know is the Guard's son, right? I think it is. Or anybody at the table, what can we do to recover our youth? Because what we see now is a level of indiscipline I never thought I would have seen, level of violence. What do you think that we can come up with in an idea how we can get these youth back in order? It's not going to be easy, because when you find a home these days where the woman in a home is when a home is strong. Don't worry, we men was walk about and babble we mouth. When the woman is in the home is when that home is strong. Somewhere along the line, they found a way to get these women out of the home. I've never seen so much female guards in my life, security guards, which means that these women leave in the afternoon, they come back almost next morning. So what happens with their girl, children and all that? There's nobody to take care of the home. So tell me how you think we can get about getting these children together, because even the mothers nowadays don't know what to do. And a lot of the other men, present day men, seem to live in this sure bet and harsh race place. They give up. So tell me what you think we do. That's what I'm asking, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, sir, we'll take your question as well, and then we'll answer both.
You should learn to behave yourselves. First, I'd like to pay regards to the invitation Mr. Hamilton Green has given me. And I've spent a wonderful day listening to some history that I know and some history that I believe was forgotten. And I will speak with some of the history I know. On the day after independence, the Guyana dollar relationship to the United States dollar was $1.26 Guyana to $1 United States. And for the younger people here, it was 100 cents in a dollar. Today, we have 2 $230 United States is the relationship. That's where the function is now. $1 US is equivalent to $230 Guyana. That, in monetary terms, is the deterioration of our independence. We have to understand the floor. That's the floor. I've heard a little speak on my subject, history. And we have VA Daily, and I'm certain many of us here as don't know that we have the history of Guyana by VA Daily. It goes up to about independence. But you need to know that before, because that's the floor, before we can start to write. And I disagree with my friend. I think it must be a multi-partition function to create an acceptable history of after independence. I'm sure my friend Gerald would like to contribute into that. And I want to say too, that when I heard Gerald stand up and speak, I saw the fire that we seem to have lost a bit. I saw some sparkles by the two elders at the table. Don't take away that. We big people a little strong, you know. The two elders had fire. And that's what we lost. My good friend was afraid to use the third word. But that is what we need in this country now. Balls to go forward.
Hi, thank you for your comments, sir. To answer the previous question, with regard to youth, we have to use education as a solution for youth. And the family also has a responsibility to engage youth. We can't have a situation where the older generation is familiar with certain norms and nuances, and for various reasons, the youth have been disengaged, and then hope to get them back without a concrete plan. And I would posit that the starting point for that has to be our education system, as well as the family. Because of the era we're in and the sort of empowerment that our youth has, we should also engage them, I believe, to understand what is it that we have missed. I say we because, you know, I'm probably on the taller side of age. What we have missed, because problem solving is usually best when you engage the affected person. So I think if we use education, the family, and direct engagement with the youth, then we'd begin the process of being able to engage them.
Good evening, all. First thing, I want to speak to the person who actually said what we will do now, the action. I believe we miss that critical to any action you take is political consciousness. And we have to recognize that one of the things that happened is that the youth was depoliticized. So they see anything political as problematic. And therefore, if you talk about action without a conscious population that is following you, it isn't going to be action, it's going to be disaster. Anybody who studies mass movements will know that mass movements act best when the people understand your political direction. And to the extent that we have depoliticized the society, we have created a gap between leadership and people, especially the youth. That's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is that the process of symposiums like these contribute to political consciousness. But I also want us to recognize that we are dealing with political consciousness in a different era. In the era of TikTok, in the era of Instagram. And some of the old approaches we know will not work. And therefore, we have to sit, analyze the situation, and come up with strategic approaches that will allow you to achieve your objectives in the present context. And I did this warning because I know the tendency of people is to believe you could just get up, get it rolling, etc. Not only our young people, but I want to say this. All the presentations, or most of the presentations I would have heard, treat young people as a problem rather than a resource to develop. If we change that approach and treat them as a resource to develop, including political consciousness, then we stand a better chance.
Martin, and to everyone who contributed to tonight's discussion. As we move towards the conclusion of tonight's program, I now invite Mr. Anil Sugrim, member of the Central Executive Committee, to deliver the closing remark and vote of thanks.
Greetings in the name of LFS Burnham. It's 60 years since we are independent. But yet, we are marginalized. If we don't accept a certain political platform, we are victimized. If our faces are seen among a political group, you are sidelined. And so in this time and age that we live in, every man, boy, and girl should be treated the same. The problem that we're having in this country today is that unless we are not preparing ourselves mentally and approach the condition that we are facing every day, we are in deep trouble, especially under the PPPC government. Brothers and sisters, we are at a juncture that 70 years is coming to an end after independence. And yet, you hear people get house lot 5 to 10 years and they can't locate it where they. And yet, you try to sit down and see a good movie, whether it's religious or it's Western or it's Chinese or it's boxing,
and the blackout come on, and you, the children, can't see it. We're talking about families spending time with their children together. In this time and age, you can't get water. You gotta dip water outside to flush the toilet. We're talking about 60 years in independence. Why should we be going through this? Members of the head table, when we're talking about all this money that we just get from oil, is who pocket this money really going in? Is where this money there? Because I never got a cent from oil. I had a problem in trying to get me $100,000. God said, turn your head, sir. Turn your head the other way. Circle your head. Bend down your head. Put up your head. And the thing is going. And we're talking about 60 years in independence. Brothers and sisters, there is much better that can be done in this country 60 years after we should be liberated, and our liberty should give us access to the wealth and natural resource that this country is having. We are being marginalized. Friends and families and favorites of a particular group of political party and people get benefit. The rest of us suck salt. You even can't pay for the salt now. The Honorable Leader of the People's National Congress, APNU, members of the head table, members of Parliament, General Secretary of the People's National Congress, friends, colleagues, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Special thanks to Mr. Christopher Rahman. He said he's trying to reach Comrade Hami age. And I tell people back at church, I tell the ladies, y'all wait for me because I get an old age pension with you. Y'all don't go nowhere. Wait. So, Mr. Christopher, you tell Hami, like wait for you. You come in there. Like wait. Don't go nowhere. Like wait. Thank you, senior gentlemen. Thank the younger folks for such a wonderful evening. Thank all of you for coming to make this a great success. And I can tell you, together we can march on to victory and win the battle. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Sugrim. May we all stand for the national anthem? The first and last stanza.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, let us do the first and last stanza. You know the formation. You have to be at attention for this anthem. They don't tell children that these days. At the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Dear land of Guyana, the rivers and plains, made rich by the sunshine and lost by the rain. Set them light and fair between mountains and sea. Your children salute you, dear land of the free. Dear land of Guyana, to you will we give our home is our and make us to be more worthy our heritage, land of the free. Thank you.
Thank you all for your presence and participation this evening. Live refreshments are available.